Hello, and welcome to Discussions on Loss and Grief with Ray Warner, the podcast where we shine a light on the often avoided topics of grief and loss, while also getting to know a little bit about some amazing people who are no longer with us. I'm your host, Ray Warner, and on today's episode, we're diving into a completely different topic, a different look at grief than we have up till now. And my amazing guest is Gabi Garland, and I'll let her introduce herself to you. Please, Gabi, introduce
Hi,
yourself.
everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Gosh, Ray, we've been connected on social for like at least probably 5 years at this point. Um, I am a podcast producer. I own a company called Resilient Voice Media and another company called Resilient Heart Agency. Resilient Voice Media is all the podcast production work that we do, and Resilient Voice Media is all the healing, women's retreats, coaching, and consulting work that I do. And I'm a mama of a police officer who's a total little tiny superhero. She's 5'2". And then I have my husband, and my husband and I have a little boy who's got autism and a heart diagnosis. So life is full and busy and crazy and chaotic, but amazing. So,
Yes, it's such a full life,
oh
and
my gosh,
it never keeps stop. It never stops. It keeps going always.
seriously, so much.
So, Gabi, this is definitely this the topic. Your loss is a little different for our audience up till this point. So, please, if you could tell the story of your loss and what you've
Yeah.
experienced.
So I'll give you a little bit of backstory. So I got pregnant with my daughter at 20 in a domestic violence relationship. He was quite possibly the most evil human being I have ever met in the world. And I say that with full understanding that that is the truth. He was abusive pretty much very shortly after I moved in with him. I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter, and the abuse did not stop. And so spending all those years and knowing I was one of those people, everybody's always like, I want to be this when I grow up, I want to be this. And I was like, I want to be like the little old woman that lives in a shoe with like 70 babies, like on bunk beds at her house. Like I wanted to be a mom. That was my goal. I always carried babies around everywhere I went. And so being a mom was always really important to me. And it didn't look how I thought it would look coming out of a domestic violence relationship and literally packing my things when he was going to kill me in garbage bags. And my dad came to get me that night, and I was 9 months pregnant. And so I got to look at pregnancy and having a baby through the lens of abuse and neglect and all of the things. And so uh, it was years to learn how to deal with and how to heal from what I had gone through. And so I always knew I wanted to be a mom again. And I had even, oddly enough, looked into both adoption and surrogacy, or not surrogacy, adoption and um, I guess not technically surrogacy, getting like a sperm donor and just having a baby and be like, I've done it on my own at this point, whatever. And then I met my husband, and I grew up in a pretty religious household. And so I was always kind of told it needs to look like this. You get married, then you have the house, and then you have the jobs, and then you have the babies. Like you just kind of check these boxes in your life. And I started to check those boxes. I was really happy. I was like, this is what I've waited all these years for, because my daughter was my maid of honor at our wedding. So she was 19 when her brother was born. So there's a huge gap in between when I had her and when I had him. And the pregnancy loss was shortly after we got married. So we got married in November 11th. And then I found out about 6 weeks later that I was pregnant. And we joked that we would get pregnant right away. We're like, yeah, we're gonna definitely have, because we wanted at least two.
Mhm.
And at 16 weeks, I lost Rainbow, which was uh, nothing less than a soul shaking. Like, I don't think anything in life prepares you for that. And there was so much anger. Like, I was really, really, really pissed off at God, at the world, at everything, because I was told that I was supposed to do it this way, and I did it this way. And then I got knocked on kicked in the teeth. And that was, but it was also the catalyst to the next process of my life and all the different things that I needed to address and heal from. And so I think, as sad and as devastating as it was that piece of my life that needed to happen for all the other things to fall into place, which is a really hard lesson to learn. And I wish if there was a way to learn it, it didn't go that way because that was not a gentle way to experience all of these things.
Yeah. It's like, there are things that happen to us that as we're going through it, it tears us apart. But as we look back on it, we're like, this got to happen so I could become this person and do this thing.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think we always look at things that way. And I know, you talk about grief a lot. And I think, grief looks so different for so many people. And I think sometimes we feel like, and I've talked to women before where they're like, I should be over this. It's been 10 years since he was gone. And, our bodies remember those things about the things that we've been through and the impacts that people have had on our life. And I think if we can use grief to help us find purpose or to help, live off legacy, and impact legacy from the person that we lost that we love, ways that we can serve, ways that we can honor them. I think that's how we have to look at grief, because if we don't, it'll swallow us whole and we'll never get back out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my eldest daughter's birthday was yesterday. She turned 29. This starts the countdown towards the 29th anniversary for me. 29 years, it still sometimes feels raw, but it's also what drives me. And that's why I started this podcast. It's why I serve people that I serve in coaching, because I was stuck for so long. I don't want others to be stuck for as long as I was and any longer than they need to be.
No, I do. And I think too often people, we go through this really hard time. And I do think we need to give ourselves way more grace than we ever give ourselves. The world tells us we need to get your ass up and get it together and, put on pants and stop being depressed. Like it doesn't always go that way for everybody. And so we have to give ourselves the capacity to heal from it as much as we can. And then to sit down and really look at the lesson that can help and heal other people. Because then it's all for nothing. Then we went through this horrible, horrific thing and we took nothing from it and we just keep moving. And I think that's such a disservice to a life that's lost in whatever time frame it was, whether it's to addiction or pregnancy loss, or it's just someone who passes from old age that, has impacted our life. Like there's a way to honor their legacy in the work that you do. And when we miss that piece, I feel like we're missing a really beautiful way to serve the world. That I think is so important.
Yeah. It keeps them alive. It keeps them, that's it legacy. That's really, that word, that one legacy.
It's
It, it,
legacy.
it's that line from Hamilton. Legacy is seeds in a garden that you don't get to see grow. Or I don't remember, can't believe I can't remember the line, but it's
Yeah. The
seeds you
whole
plant in a
Hamilton,
garden
yeah.
that you don't get to see grow.
No, it is. I do. And I think we are such a world that gets stuck in what's happening right now, what is or what isn't happening right now. Sometimes it's what isn't happening right now. And sometimes you have to take a step back and look at, okay, what isn't happening right now, what isn't working, but where can I find the lesson in this? Like, where is the message? Where is the piece that's maybe a little bit of the brick that's going to start building what's coming next for me? And if we can reframe the way that we look at that, it opens up a whole new world for not only you to get out of that despair of grief, because I think you can absolutely get there, and I have been there, and I'm sure that you have as well. Uh, then it's for nothing, and then what? Then
They died for nothing.
yeah, they did.
Yeah. And that's worse. I mean, in my point of view, that's worse than, what we get to keep going. We get to take our pain and bring it and create purpose out of it.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's go back. What was the immediate impact of Rainbow's loss?
So I was like very, very, very sick. So mind you, I hadn't been pregnant in like a bazillion years. So my body was probably like, what the hell are you doing, old lady? Like it was probably really not understanding what was going on. And uh I that morning when I got in the shower, I had downloaded this app that you could like listen to their heartbeat because I something was wrong and I knew it. Like I woke up that morning, my husband went to work, and I had like planned out what I was going to make for dinner, and I wasn't working at the time. I had left network marketing. And so I was just kind of floundering a little bit emotionally because I was just trying to figure out what the hell comes next. Because I moved across the country and I needed to build a whole new life and I really didn't know where to start. And I remember sitting in the shower and I just had my hands on my stomach because it's 16 weeks. There's enough of a little bit of a baby bump there. You're like, I was like talking to the baby and I'm like, all you got to do is grow. Like, we already love you. We already want you to be here. And I just remember thinking, something's not right. Like, I wasn't sick more than I normally was. But that night he got home, like later, I was like, something, I just didn't feel well. So I just went back to bed. I was laying in the bed and my husband got home. I texted him. I told him, I was like, I'm not going to get dinner done. Can you pick up something for dinner? And so I got up and ate dinner with him. And then I went back down and laid in the bed. And it wasn't 15 minutes later where it was just an absolute bloodbath. Like, I got up and actually lost the baby at home. Uh, and I just remember thinking as I'm sitting on the toilet, as raw as this is there's no way that this much blood, that this baby is still here. And I didn't know at the time that I had actually lost him already, but I knew this is way too much blood for this baby to survive. And so I think we were newly married. And so it's a very raw, very scary to just be that, like, oh my gosh. And I remember just he got a bunch of things together and we rushed to the hospital and I couldn't even really walk. They wheeled me in and they're like, okay, well, we need to do all these tests. And the worst part about that entire situation was the girl that did the initial ultrasound was newer, I believe. And then the girl that came in to check her work, because I guess she missed some images or whatever, was very visibly probably like 7 or 8 months pregnant. So not only was I really real time understanding that like my baby's gone because this girl had no poker face, I was also watching someone that got to keep their baby. And so I was like, this is my own private hell. Like, this is literally the bottom of the barrel. I don't think I've ever felt this horrible. And it was just devastating. The blessing of it, in that moment, was the very next morning we actually had couples therapy, and he gave us probably the biggest key to what we would end up going through with Squish years later, uh, was how to create boundaries around what we will and won't talk about, how to create space for what we need and not to have to help others grieve the loss that we were grieving. And I think we don't teach about grief. We don't teach about what it's like to say, I don't want to discuss that, or I can't, you had a loss too, but I can't cry with you today. I need to cry for me.
Yeah.
And it was we were so lucky that he was there, that, and we dug into therapy together of just things that he was struggling with, things that I was struggling with. And we've actually covered it on Resilient Heart, where it's just nobody wants to walk that road. And the biggest gift that I think you can give yourself when you go through whatever loss it is to find somebody to be able to support you, whether it's a therapist or a coach or somebody that has some skills that can literally help you navigate this world that's going to really, really, really suck.
Yeah.
It will help that healing process to get you out of despair and get you into action that will help you get, sometimes really slow, out of that space and get some forward movement in some way, whatever that way is going to look like.
Yeah. And it, from what I'm hearing you say, that was key to your foundation for the rest of your life.
Oh
Really.
yeah, it was. And I don't think, I don't think he knew the gift that he gave us, because we didn't know back then that the next baby we had would have a heart condition and end up autistic and all these other things that we went through. But that lesson, that one piece, was worth all of the money that we spent with him all of those years, because I think uh, we wouldn't have known to, because I was such a making sure everyone was okay, even in my own struggles, that I couldn't even get through my own stuff at that point. And um, it was just, it was the darkest time of my life, honestly. It really, really was. I tell people, like, that's what broke me open, is really what it felt like.
Mm. Talk more about the barrier or not barrier, the boundaries that you set up. A lot of times, people don't know how to be around those of us who've lost somebody.
I think a couple things. So I've learned so much through what we went through, but I've also learned so much through several girlfriends that have had some pretty substantial losses. And I think so often we want answers. Like if we reach out, we're like, how did they die? And what happened? And people think information is going to make them feel better. But information is intrusive, it's nosy, and it's hurtful. And I feel like people need to be really mindful of the questions that they're asking and the ways that they're showing up for somebody else. Like you don't want to do more harm than good. And so I think boundaries have to look like really in the morning when you're going through grief in whatever capacity that is, wake up and check in. What do I need today? What is that? Because some days it's like, I need to pull the covers back over my head. I need to put Netflix on. I need to just zone out. And maybe I need to cry a little bit. Maybe I need to go for a walk. Maybe I need a friend that'll just sit and listen with me. I think we're so accustomed as people in general, whether parents or not parents, of helping other people and showing up and kind of soldiering through. And we never really stop to check in with what we need. And so I think boundaries start with that. We can't ask for or create a boundary around a need we don't even know that we're addressing or recognizing within ourselves. And that was part of what I learned then is like also where is and isn't a safe space. I think that's one of the biggest things because sometimes people want to relate and then they end up trauma dumping on you and then you're like it's okay and like I'm going through this and now you're taking your stuff and you're piling it on top of what I'm going through and now I'm struggling harder and now I'm crying harder and now it's way worse. And I think sometimes saying to somebody like I can't walk this with you, I think is such a really beautiful way to create a boundary of like thank you for reaching out, but I can't do this with you right now, or I don't have the capacity. And I also think eliminating yourself from the expectation of what other people may or may not want or need from you, because people still expect us to show up in the way that we've always shown up instead of allowing for them to do enough that's needed. Like I think social media gives you this very unrealistic connection with people a lot of times where people think, oh, well, they're posting, but they're not texting me back. Well, sometimes posting means they're keeping their business alive when they're literally like, I'm down to my last $4 fucking. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't want to post, but I need to pay my bills. And so even when I don't want to do that, I've got to. And then there becomes these snap judgments that we make and these stories that other people make up in their heads about how we're showing up or how we're not. And I think the boundary starts with allowing people to think whatever the hell they want and taking care of ourselves first.
Yeah. So if you were going to give suggestions, recommendations to people on how to be with their friends, their family who've experienced this kind of a loss, like something has come up on our previous episodes, are the idea of helping with meals without having to be asked, like just showing up with food, because when you're in this, cooking is the last thing you want to think about.
Right. Oh yeah. And I think too, people are like, well, let me know if you need anything. Like we definitely gonna need something. So just show up. And I think one of the biggest gifts that you can give people is like meal trains or gift cards to get food delivered. Cause sometimes it's not even, I don't even want to put pants on to leave my house because I am in that deep of a space and it's always more expensive and that kind of sucks. But sometimes like the DoorDash is like chef's kiss important, I feel like, for anybody that's experienced a loss, because I think it doesn't require of them anything other than just, let me just pick what I want.
Mhm.
And that's probably one of the biggest ones that was really helpful. I think stopping to not ask people what they need and just do something kind. If it's, and it's all dependent upon what your budget is. No one says you need to drop $500 on a gift card and send it their way unless that's the capacity that you have to serve.
Yeah.
But I think like I do this all the time with people that have losses. Like a woman lost a significant other, or a friend or a son or a family member. And I'll literally just message them like, hey lady, I saw your post. I was like, can I send you? I was like, I don't know if you're sleeping very well, but can I send you some meditations just to like kind of help your body like relax and try to like breathe. I said, I know there's nothing that anybody can say, but this really helped me when I couldn't sleep or when I was really struggling. And so I have a file that I just send off to people when I know they're going through something. And I think finding a way that you can help and serve and love on somebody in a way that makes sense for who you are, I think is really important, because we all have certain gifts and certain ways that we can help. And sometimes it's just shipping a journal to somebody on Amazon and being like, get that out of you. Like, be able to start to kind of process through that stuff. And one of my favorite ways to help and to for my own grief and for clients and just friends is I do like it's a journal. Sometimes it's in my phone, sometimes it's actually a like a real tangible journal. But anytime a really beautiful memory of somebody that I lost comes up, I write it down in this journal. And so on days that I feel disconnected from them, or days that just feel a lot heavier, I pull up those memories and I just laugh about like stupid stuff we laughed at, or funny stories they told, or memories that I have of them. And I think when it's really, really hard, and you can, I don't want to say force yourself, but you can lean into the connection that was there. It makes them feel closer than they are far away. And it helps you find a little bit of a silver lining or a little bit of joy in all the things that are really, really hard about walking a grief journey that I don't think ever ends. I don't think you ever really get over some losses. And I think other losses are hard, but you navigate them a lot quicker. That grieving process I feel like isn't as substantial, but some losses I feel like you're going to feel that forever. It's going to hurt forever.
Yeah.
And you've just got to hold space for that. You've got to allow it.
Speak more into that, the allowing it, because something that I've learned is the value of giving yourself grace. Like you're not going to be okay all the time,
Nope.
and that's okay.
Yeah. I think the grace piece comes from finding ways to serve in a way that honors their memory. So there's a couple things, and I'll share a couple of my favorites just for me personally, and that I teach as well. So I have a really good friend that passed away when I was 16. He was one of my favorite human beings. We were like, it was never a romantic thing. It was like brother and sister that used to fight with each other. And we worked together. We didn't go to school together. We worked together in the city that was close to my hometown. And he passed away in his sleep. And so it was very sudden. And I always call him in. I know that sounds weird, but when something's really hard or when I'm really struggling, like I will literally just like close my eyes and say a prayer. Like, I just need to know you're close. I need to know you're near. I need to know that you see me. I need to know that you're closer than I want, I need to know you're close. And my tell for him is these ridiculously freaking ugly. I used to call him his Ronald McDonald shoes. They are these red and white Jordans that are not very, I mean, this is, I was this 16, I'm 45. So this has been a long time. Every time I do that, and it's happened at hospital appointments, it's happened at surgeries, it's happened sitting at a cemetery for somebody else that passed, somebody will walk by with those shoes. And and I'm just like, hey, bro, like, I
Yeah.
know that he's there. And so I think if you can find something that's unique to them, because if you can be like, oh, maybe it's like the color blue, like your blues everywhere. You need to fix something that's very specific for who they are.
Mm.
And then ask for it. Say, I want to know you're here, and then see how long it takes. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's a week, but it helps that grieving process, because I think it starts to kind of put a little bit of balm on that loneliness of them being gone. I have another girlfriend who was obsessed with Mary J. Blige. That was her girl. That was her. And I have exactly 4 songs of Mary J. Blige on my Apple Music out of like 4,500 songs.
Mhm.
And when I say, like, I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, gosh, I just miss her, like something funny or petty I want to send her, will happen when I wake up in the morning. I was like, I miss you. I just wish you were here. And no sooner than I turn my music on, it's like sometimes it's no less than the third song that comes up. 4 songs out of 4,500. So I'm like, hey, girl. And it'll always make me cry. It always makes me emotional. But I think it also makes me know she's not that far.
Mm.
She's up there being petty. I'm down here being petty. And that's just what we're doing.
That's great. I love that. And I'm going to actually start using that because I
It's
really like.
so like, I have a client, and she's actually the reason why we launched Resilient Voice Media. Her baby girl, her call in is a bee. And so on her podcast cover, we actually did a little tiny bee next to her name in honor of her daughter. And all the time, like when I'm really connected, like, cause I end up so connected with a lot of my clients because they work with me for so long, uh, that I end up seeing bees and and it's like one of those weird things. And I'll send it to her. She's like, she knew she was going to get me today, but she knew I needed her. And so I think if we look for those moments and if we show up and are open to them, I do think the veil between people that are gone and people that are here is so much thinner than we think it is. And if we can allow ourselves that space, like it doesn't feel as sad as it does right now when when you're able to do that.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. So normally the last question I ask is to talk about the person that you lost and bring them alive for the listeners. How can you honor Rainbow in this way?
I think the thing about Rainbow is, and I will not cry on this one. I will not cry on this. I think I spent so many years because of the trauma that I had experienced waiting for the life that I get to experience now. And so there's never a moment that I'm lost in without gratitude for all that's happened. But I think there was a point where I got a little cocky on it. I really do. I think I was like, I made it out of my hometown. I'm where I want to be. I'm away from, all of that. And I did. And not that I think that God took him to make me humble, but I think there was a lesson that I needed to learn that I wouldn't have learned another way. And I also think when I look at the connection between Rainbow and Squish, those two, and I have videos of where I'm like, oh, he's in there hanging out with Rainbow. Like I can hear them. It's like, when you're little and you're playing in your room with your friends or your siblings and you're doing the most and running around and giggling, that like when little kids are giggling together, he's giggling like that. And he doesn't giggle like that all the time. And so I can hear him in there with Rainbow. And sometimes he's babbling, sometimes he's, having little conversations. And had Rainbow not passed away and had we not had that loss, Squish would not be as healthy as he is because I would not have had the blood clot that I had, which was the catalyst to put me on blood thinners, which essentially saved Rainbow saved Squishy's life. And so anytime I think about how hard that loss is, because I would have loved to have two babies in this house, though I don't know how would I do it because I'm exhausted. I think about not just Rainbow, but anybody that's passed, that what is the lesson that I can learn? And losing Rainbow, literally, like I said, it broke me open. It broke me open to the understanding of different ways to heal that weren't just traditional therapy, like Reiki and hypnosis and energy healing and all of those things. And I think to get to have crawled out of that hole, which was really, really heavy, and to be able to share that message is what has connected me to women all around the world. And I think so much of what we forget to find is the piece that's supposed to help others, because I don't think if we do it right, we don't go through these really soul shaking lessons in our life without a way to reach back and bring somebody else along and help them and serve them. And maybe it's just being an ear. It doesn't always mean they're going to be your client. It means maybe they're just the really good friend that's just like, man, she fucking gets me because she's been there. And if we don't share those stories about our life, if we don't talk about the ways that we were in the pit and we got out of the pit and are standing strong and on the other side of it, I think we miss connection. And I think we miss that authentic piece that connects you to everybody. It's what builds connection and friendship and business. And we've talked about this before, but it's like I hate the really spammy, horrible, you don't even know me and all of a sudden you want to help me fix all my stuff. And I'm like, I don't freaking know you. But the more that we lean into our unique stories, the more we're like, man, people get to see like they're not by themselves. And I think I love that you have this podcast because men don't talk about a lot of this stuff and men suffer in silence more than anybody else. And grief, I don't know that men always lean into those moments to get support and to get love and to accept it, because it's like, oh, we got bills to pay and I got to be the breadwinner and I got to, and I learned that through the lens of my husband of how everything was such a different experience for him than it was for me, and learning how to hold space for that for him as well. And I think there's lessons on lessons on lessons when you crawl out of the pit. And I think if you don't look for them, you'll stay there. And then what?
Yeah, it's all for nothing.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you so much.
No,
Yeah,
thank you.
you are amazing, and
You are amazing yourself, my friend.
thank you. Thank you. I accept. I agree. I receive,
Yes.
and I'd love it if you would tell the audience where they can find you.
I am Gabi, Gabi Garland on every single place that you can find me. Resilient Heart Podcast is my podcast. And that is on all of the platforms that you can find. We're kind of on YouTube, but I'm going back in and having that redone actually. So we're going to be sharing some of those pit stories that I've never shared. My coach is like, okay, it's time. You're on the other side. It's time. And I'm like, ooh, okay. Like, I'm not excited for it, but I know it's time. And so reach out, send me an email, send me a DM if you want to be a guest, or you just need a cheerleader, because I think the world can get really hard and really scary and really tough. And I think sometimes we just need someone to cheer for us in our corner, even if we don't even know them. And sometimes I think our biggest cheerleaders come from people that don't know us, because when we start changing and growing and becoming people they don't recognize, they're not always rocking with it. And so sometimes your new circle will champion you quicker than your old circle. And so if you're looking for some of that, like, I'm all about hype girl life. I'm about it. So
Awesome. Awesome. I'll make sure all the info for you is in the show notes. And
okay.
again, thank you for
No, thank
being
you.
on. Thank you to the listeners for listening to Gabby's amazing story.
Right.
And we'll be back next week with another amazing story of loss and grief. Thank you for
Guys.
listening.